Let's imagine this file exists, so we successfully open it for reading, but something goes wrong when we try to read data from this file. This could happen because of a hardware problem. Now we have a problem in this code. The problem is that we have opened this file for reading, but nowhere we have closed it. File handles are operating system resources, so whenever we get them, we should always release them. Otherwise, other processes may not be able to access these resources. So somewhere in this code, we should write reader.close. Now, there's a problem with this implementation. Can you tell? The problem is that if this line throws an exception, the runtime will pass the control to this catch block, so this line will never get executed. Now, what if we put this line after our try catch block? Now the reader variable is not recognized because we have declared it inside this try block, so it's only accessible in this block. But let's not worry about it for a second. The problem with this implementation is that sometime in the future, another developer might come here and write some extra code, and this code may throw an exception. Again, our reader is not going to get closed. The proper way to handle this kind of scenarios is to use the finally block. So right after the catch block, we type finally. Now in this block, we can release external resources like file handles, database connections, network connections, and so on. So here we should type reader.close. But once again, reader is not recognized because it's only accessible in the try block. To solve this problem, we need to declare this before our try block. So we type file reader, and then set it over here. And by the way, we cannot use var over here because we can use var only when we set this to a new instance of a class. So the compiler knows that this object is an instance of the file reader class. In this case, we're not initializing this variable. So the compiler doesn't know what is the type of this variable, okay? So let's type file reader. Now, we have a compilation error. Variable reader might not have been initialized because in Java, before we can access an object, we should always initialize it. So if this line doesn't get executed, if it throws an exception, we'll try to use an uninitialized object. To solve this problem, we need to explicitly set this to null. The compilation error is gone. Now we have a different kind of error. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, let's add an if statement. We want to call the close method only if the reader is not null. So if reader is not null, then close it. But what is this compilation error? Unhandled exception, IO exception. So the close method may also throw an IO exception. To solve this problem, we need to wrap this inside the try catch block. So we put the caret over here, press Alt and Enter, and then surround with try catch. So here's the final result. Now, this code looks really ugly. I have to admit that we have a much better exception handling structure in C#. Now, that aside, what I want you to take away here is that this finally block will always get executed, whether we have an exception or not. If we don't have an exception, all the code inside the try block will get executed, and then the runtime will pass control to the finally block. If one of these lines throws an exception, one of our catch blocks will get executed, and then the finally block will get executed. So the finally block will always get executed no matter what. Now, this implementation is really ugly. In the next video, I'm going to show you a better way to release external resources.